Welcome to a series that we call The End of Times, where we go through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times, or the times Jesus referred to as the end of the age. And we've gone through the book of Revelation verse by verse, and where we are at is we are at the point where John had been taken up into the throne room of God, where we got to look around. He notices that God has a scroll in his hand with 7 seals. All 7 of those seals have been broken, and then there is then 7 trumpets that will then blast from 7 angels. And once the seals are broken, what is written in that scroll is the divine coming of the kingdom of heaven on earth as it is in heaven. And as those trumpets blast, things take place. Now the wrath of God is being unleashed on the earth. And the first trumpet blasts, and hail and fire come down and destroy 1/3 of the earth. Second trumpet blast, something like a burning mountain or meteor hits off the coast and destroys 1/3 of the earth. The third trumpet blasts, and something like a star falling from heaven, burning like a lamp. Now this isn't a meteor, this is an angel that had fallen down or come down to the earth, and he poisons the hearts of men on that 1/3 of the earth. And then the fourth trumpet blasts, and the sky is darkened over 1/3 of the earth. And then finally there's an angel who declares, well, it says angel in most Bibles, but the Greek word is for an eagle. And of course John is in heaven seeing this. Says, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the rest of the earth. Meaning, so those first 4 blasts were ultimately destroying 1/3 of the earth, or Babylon. And we'll get into what Babylon is in the future when we get to that section of Revelation. Now, these next 3 blasts are going to infect the entire planet. And that's kind of where we're at. And he says, whoa, 3 times, because the last 3 blasts are different, like whoa, by the end of those. So, now we're at the 5th trumpet, the first woe. Revelation 9 verse 1. Then the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Now, so going back to that 3rd trumpet where a star fell, so here we are, we have another star, and many times in the Bible, and we're going to see that again today, as angels are referred to stars. They could probably look like stars coming down, is my guess. Not really sure why they're referred to that, but they're often referred to as stars. Now, this 5th trumpet is very significant. I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. That's very significant. What is this bottomless pit? Well, first of all, remember that we are in a spiritual war. There's a spiritual war taking place, and a lot of what we're going to see in Revelation is the spiritual realm of what's taking place. And as humans, we're kind of victims of that to some degree. Now, Ephesians 6:12 tells us, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. So what is this pit? Well, we're going to go back to Isaiah for a second. There's a point in Isaiah where he's talking about Satan in Isaiah 14, verses 12 through 15. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the furthest side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Then we see this actually take place in Revelation. So what Isaiah is saying, yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. And if we jump to Revelation 20, verse 1. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hands. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal on him, so that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things he must be released for a little while. And then 2 Peter 2:4 tells us that, for if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of the 8 people, of a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly. So in a weird way, it's almost like an angel prison, this bottomless pit. And when it is opened up, there's some bad things that are going to take place, because ultimately this pit is, again, it's like an angel jail or a prison to some degree. Sheol, or hell. Revelation 11:7 tells us, now when they finish their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them. So, things are being released out of this bottomless pit onto the earth, and that is not a good thing. Now, what they're talking about there in Revelation 11 is that there will be this point where Christians who are professing Jesus Christ, something's going to come out of that bottomless pit, and it's going to wage war against them, and that's ultimately going to be the beast. So right after the 4th trumpet, when 1/3 of the earth was darkened, this 5th trumpet begins with the whole world being darkened. So just kind of ultimately what's taking place is this 5th trumpet, an eagle saying, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, and then this 5th trumpet sounds, and then an angel comes down, opens up this bottomless pit, which seems to be an angel demon prison of some sort, and then smoke just comes ripping out of there like a furnace, and it completely darkens the entire earth. Now, as we continue through what's going on with this pit, and when they opened it, this 5th trumpet blast, it gets really, really bad. Ultimately, God is allowing things that were bound on the earth in this bottomless pit to be released, and it gets really, really terrible for the inhabitants of the earth. And it just begins with this smoke just ripping out of it like a furnace. So we're going to continue with this 5th trumpet. We're going to see some hornets stinging people. It's going to get pretty terrible here for a bit. There's a lot of prophecy about the whole earth being darkened, and when we went to the 4th trumpet and 1/3 of the earth was darkened, that's just kind of the beginning of the darkness. That's ultimately a meteor hits, and it just all the dust and debris flies up, and it blocks out 1/3 of the earth. But here what we're going to see is smoke just ripping out of this bottomless pit like a furnace, and that's going to then cover the rest of the earth. And this bottomless pit is kind of like an angel prison, and apparently there's a lot of other things down there, because we're going to see a lot of different things come up out of this pit. And whoever this angel was, he was given a key to it, so he had authority to go down and open that pit up and let whatever's in there out. Welcome to a series that we call The End of Times, where we go through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to understand what it is we can expect to happen in the end times, or the time Jesus refers to as the end of the age. Now, I just want to give kind of an announcement here. Every time we do an end of time series, and I think this is episode 46, we do a recap of where we've been through the book of Revelation up to this point, because we're going through it verse by verse, and I say where we are at this point. And I think some people are watching an episode here or there, and they think that I'm saying that in the world, this is where we are. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in the book, this is where we are. So in the book of Revelation, as we've read verse by verse, where we are in the book is John has been taken up into the throne room of God, where we're able to look around the throne room for a while. And he notices that God has a scroll in his hand with 7 seals, and it's determined that only Jesus is worthy to open that scroll, because it is what's written in that scroll is the divine appointment of the coming of his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And it's been sealed. And as those 7 seals are broken, what we see is a lot of events take place that are done by man. It's done by the evil hearts of men. Those all 7 seals until you get to the very last one. And now God is always in control, and his horsemen are kind of allowing these things to take place on the earth. But once that scroll is actually opened and the 7th seal is broken, then the wrath of God is unleashed on the earth. So everything up until that point had been caused by man. Once that scroll is opened, then we get the prelude to the trumpets, and there's 7 trumpets. When the first trumpet blast, hail and fire fell down to 1/3 of the earth, and that third is Babylon. And later on, in Revelation, when we get to the section on Babylon, we'll kind of give a description of what the 1/3 of the earth is. But hail and fire rain down on it. And then Bible says something like a burning mountain. We can only assume it's a large meteor, strikes off the shore of Babylon, destroying 1/3 of it. And then wormwood, who is an angel, comes down and poisons the hearts of men in that third. And then the sun is darkened, probably because of all the dust and debris that has flown up into the atmosphere from the meteor. And then we get to that 5th trumpet. So everything up until the first 4 trumpets have been the destruction of Babylon. That 5th trumpet, then we see that an eagle in heaven is flying around saying, "Woe, woe, woe," 3 times to the inhabitants of the earth for the next 3 trumpets. And that's where we are. So the 5th trumpet is blasted, and last time we talked about what took place here. That an angel came down with the key to the bottomless pit, and then we went into, well, what is that bottomless pit? And now we're about to get into what happens when that is opened. So we're going to pick it up in Revelation 9, verse 2. "And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit." Now I'm going to pause there real quick. We read this verse last time, but there's so many prophecies about the earth being darkened. And what we saw with the 4th trumpet was that 1/3 of the earth was darkened. Now with this 5th trumpet, the entire earth is being darkened, and kind of stay with that. That's very important, because we're going to come back in this episode to a timeline and talk about when all this is happening and how long does it last. We'll pick it up in 3. "Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads." And of course we talked about what that seal meant back in chapter 7. "And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them. And the shape of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle. And on their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like the breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots and many horses running into battle. And they had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. And their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon. One woe is past, behold, still more woes are coming after these things." There is so much going on in these verses here, and I wanted to read that entire section to kind of go over what's taking place here. Now, it says that ultimately what you're seeing is the bottomless pit has been opened, and smoke just starts ripping out. So much smoke that it blocks the sun from the entire planet, and then out of the smoke comes these locusts, which are probably a lot like a wasp, given the ability to sting. And then there's a description of them, and they clearly have a king over them, and they don't harm any grass or leaves. They're straight up after men, but only men that do not bear the mark of God or the seal of God on their foreheads, which is a spiritual seal. It's something that regular men won't be able to see, as we talked about back in chapter 7. So I want to talk about this timeline for a second, then we're going to get into, because Joel also saw this taking place, and we're going to read his description of this, and then we'll come back to it to see exactly what is happening with these locusts tormenting men for 5 months, and apparently stinging him so bad they want to die. So let's take another look at our timeline. Okay, well, the darkness comes, according to Daniel 8, 1,150 days after the abomination of desolation. So we know that this is happening, so that the darkness is taking place 1,150 days after the abomination. So that's when this fourth and fifth trumpet are being blasted, right about then. Now it says he torments them that they torment men for 5 months. Now, when we look at the Hebrew calendar, which is what John would have used, it's in lunar months, which is 29.5 days a month exactly. So we're looking at tormenting for 147.5 days, 147 and a half days roughly, is when they will be tormenting them. So if we look at the darkness, according to Daniel 12, for 1,290 days after abomination, the tribulation ends. So from darkness to the end of tribulation, you're looking at 140 days. So there's about a week, either prior to the darkness or after the darkness, that these locusts slash wasps slash spiritual warriors are coming out of this smoke. And then that ends the tribulation. So for the entire time in the darkness, and then of course you have 185 days from the darkness before Christ returns, according to, again, Daniel 12, 1,335 days. So once the darkness hits, you have 140 days before tribulation ends. During that entire time, this is what's happening. This is what God is unleashing, because up until this point, man is waging war against the Christians and killing them and causing all sorts of terrible things to take place on the earth. Hunger, famine, disease, war is all taking place, but it's all caused by man. And then once these seals start breaking, then we see Babylon destroyed. Then all of a sudden then there's this darkness on the land, and now these terrible locusts slash scorpions are coming out that are clearly led by spiritual things. So once that darkness hits, again, you got 140 days till tribulation ends, and for 147 and a half days, these things are just ripping people apart. Now, I want to jump into Joel, because Joel also saw this take place, and he gives a totally different description. Well, similar but very different. It gives a little more detail on what's happening here. So if we jump to Joel 2, we're going to read 1 through 11, and then we're going to break it down, because a lot of people interpret this wrong, and they do it because they read the English translation, but if you actually read the Hebrew translation, you'd see something very different. So we're going to read it, and then I'll break it down for you. But this is the same event that we're seeing with that fifth trumpet. Joel 2, verse 1. Blow the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming, for it is at hand. A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, like the morning clouds spread over the mountains. The people come, great and strong, the like of whom has never been, nor will ever be, any such after them, even for many successive generations. So people are coming according to this verse, but let's see what that word actually means, because it's not people that Joel's talking about. And even if you continue to read Joel and you didn't read the Hebrew version, there's no way you can interpret that as actual people. The word that they use here is, it says a people came great and strong, but it's Rob, a great, Weasam, and strong, Shyam, troops appear. So what it really should say is Rab, Weassam, Shyam, a great and strong troops appear. Not people, troops. But my New King James Version interprets it as people, but it's troops is the actual Hebrew word. All right, we'll pick up in 3. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Surely nothing shall escape them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and like swift steeds so they run. With a noise like chariots over mountains they leap, like the noise of flaming fire that devours the stubble. Like a strong people set in battle array. Now let's again go back to that word people. Now in 2:5 it says like a strong people, but what it really says is like a mighty army, is what the King James Version says, but it's Kiam. It's like a mighty army. So ultimately what they're saying is, if you go back to 2, troops come great and strong like a mighty army set in battle array. And let's pick it up in 6. Before them the people writhe in pain. All faces are drained of color. They run like mighty men. They climb the wall like men of war. Everyone marches in formation, and they do not break ranks. They do not push one another. Everyone marches in his own column, and when they lunge between their weapons, they are not cut down. They run to and fro in the city. They run on the wall. They climb into the houses. They enter at the windows like a thief. The earth quakes before them. The heaven trembles. The sun and moon grow dark, and the stars diminish their brightness. The Lord gives voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For strong is the one who executes his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible. Who can endure it? So reading that section in Joel, and I recommend everybody go back and read, it's Joel 2, verse 1 through 11. But now knowing that, knowing what you know in Joel, now let's go back to Revelation and take another look at this, because the other thing that I want to point out in Joel is it says great and strong is the one who takes his direction. So God has put somebody in charge, and even Joel recognized whoever this is great and strong. And now let's read this again. 9 verse 2. And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke rose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green thing, or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months, and their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. Now, let's kind of jump back to Joel real quick now that we know that. If you look at Joel 2, there's something that's peculiar that it says, if you look at 2 verse 6, it says, before them the people writhe in pain. All their faces are drained of color. So this is not working out well for these men that are getting whooped up by whatever these things are. Now we're back, I apologize, we're in Revelation 9 verse 6. In those days men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them. And the shape of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle, just like Joel said. And on their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like the breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings were like the sounds of chariots with many horses running into battle, just like Joel said. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men for 5 months. So this is, once it becomes dark, this is what happens. Apparently they come in columns. They just rolling across the landscape in columns, just destroying everything in their path. These are clearly angelic. I don't want to say they're angels, but they're definitely heavenly beings that have come out of the pit. So they could be demonic things, but they're being directed by a spiritual warrior, a strong spiritual warrior, according to Joel. And then if we look then at Revelation 9 verse 11, it says, "And they had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek he has the name Apollyon." So this is really not turning out good for anybody that does not have that seal on their forehead. So, even if we look at the rapture at this point, the rapture has not taken place. So if you're a Christian on this earth, you've been essentially persecuted by the beast, by the Antichrist, to the point of many deaths. Many have been slain, but you've been able to prophesy. When we get to what the witnesses can do, there's some amazing power in that. And then all of a sudden you're watching Babylon get destroyed. A third of the earth gets destroyed, and then smoke just starts ripping out of whatever this bottomless pit is on the earth. And it darkens the entire planet, and then something like a locust / horse / scorpion / armor-plated man-looking thing is now coming across the landscape in columns, completely devouring and stinging anybody that does not have the seal of God on their forehead. And apparently they want to die. It hurts so bad that they wish for death. And according to Joel, it just takes the color out of their face, and they're just in writhing pain. And this goes on for 147 and a half days. And this is really, and again, I kind of want to go back to these trumpets are good news for Christians. This sounds awful. This isn't going to happen to me. I definitely intend on being there when this event takes place, but I'm going to watch these things pass right by me, because I definitely will be sealed by God, as you will be if you're a Christian. And that's why it's really important that we see ourselves there, because the wrath of God is not unleashed on Christians. And a lot of times people interpret that as being, well, that means we get raptured up before this happens. No, that's not what that means. It definitely says that Christians are being persecuted and killed. And it definitely says nothing about a rapture of the church, but then later on, right before the end of the tribulation, then that's when the rapture occurs. And when we get to that place, we will then bring that up. But that's where we're at now. We're going to stay on this section for one more episode. Next time we're going to talk about who is Abaddon, clearly a great spiritual leader who is driving this entire assault on the men of the earth who are not of God. But Christians, you have nothing to worry about. This is good news. Again, up until this point, they're getting killed by the Antichrist. So these trumpets are like the cavalry has shown up. It's definitely God's wrath on the ungodly and the unrighteous of the earth, and there's plenty of them. Welcome to a series that we call The End of Times, where we go through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times, or the times Jesus referred to as the end of the age. And as we've gone through the book of Revelation verse by verse, where we are in the book of Revelation is John has been taken up into the throne room of God, where we're given a chance to look around. And he notices that God has a scroll in his hand with 7 seals. And what's written in that scroll is the divine appointment of the coming of his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And it's determined that only Jesus Christ is worthy to open that scroll. And as Jesus breaks each seal one by one, what we see is events take place on the earth that are caused by man. Now, horsemen who are spiritual leaders of God, they are kind of helping manipulate the process, but generally speaking, it's the hearts of men, the evil hearts of men, that are causing these things to happen. And what takes place is rulers are appointed, then there's massive war, followed by massive famine, followed by massive death, followed by heavy persecution of the Christians, and then eventually that scroll is opened up. And what we see at that point is the wrath of God for the first time. And that starts in the form of 7 trumpets. The first trumpet blasts, and fire and hail come down on a third of the earth, which is Babylon, which we'll get into later. Then a meteor comes and strikes the shore, off the shore of Babylon, and a third of the earth is then impacted by that, followed by an angel named Wormwood who comes down and poisons the hearts of the men on that third. and then followed by darkness on that third. And that's 4 trumpets. When the 5th trumpet blasts, now what we're seeing is the wrath of God on the entire planet, not just Babylon, but the entire planet. And what it begins is at that first blast, an angel comes down and opens up the bottomless pit, which we talked about what that was, and then smoke just comes ripping out of it like a furnace, and it darkens the entire earth, followed by these strange creatures that are coming out and stinging those who are not marked by God and causing them excruciating pain, and they torment them for 5 months. Now, I want to make an important note at this point that the trumpets for Christians is great news. That's like the cavalry showing up. Because up until that first trumpet, it was just heavy persecution of warring by the Antichrist against the Christians who are declaring Jesus Christ is Lord, while the Antichrist is saying, no, I am Lord, follow me or else I'm going to chop your head off, essentially. So this is good news for Christians. And as these creatures come out and they're stinging men, it says at the end of 9, which is where we're at now, that they have a leader. And his name is Abaddon. We'll pick it up in 9 verse 10. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. And their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon. But in Greek, he has the name Apollyon. So this Abaddon, and as we checked out in the last episode, he's a pretty tough angel. So who is he? Well, there's a lot of verses that we can see who Abaddon is and who it is he's after and what it is his mission is. So if we go back to Jude chapter 1, and Jude is just one book back from Revelation, if we pick it up in verse 5, it says, "But I want to remind you, though you once knew this, that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe. And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own habitation, he is reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day." So ultimately what this is Abaddon is a very mighty angel who apparently has caused some problems, and we're going to see a lot of what those problems are. But he and many other angels, fallen angels, so we're talking demonic things, are being held in Sheol or below in this bottomless pit. So as we noticed, a mighty angel, just opened the pit, and now we see all these creatures coming out, followed by the announcement that they have a king over them, and his name is Abaddon. But who is Abaddon? Well, if we take a look at Proverbs 27, we're going to start to begin to see who Abaddon is. And Proverbs 27:19, as in water face reveals face, talking about your reflection, so a man's heart reveals the man. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. And that word destruction is Abaddon. So we're starting to kind of get an idea of Abaddon. His name is literally destruction. Now, it also says that it's never full. He's never full. He's never satisfied. There's always this evil from the heart. As long as men are on the world, you can continue to fill up Sheol and Abaddon. So if we then take a look at Proverbs 15, 8 through 11, it says, "The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. The way of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but he loves him who follows righteousness. Harsh correction is for him who forsakes the way, and he who hates reproof will die. Hell and Abaddon are before the Lord, so how much more the hearts of the sons of men?" So ultimately what they're saying here is it's about the hearts of men. So again, these trumpets, these are good news for Christians, but this is not good news for those who have not been washed clean by the blood of Christ, because Abaddon is coming out to seek to destroy those who are not marked by God. It's about a judgment. What's taking place here is God's judgment. Now, Abaddon, destruction, is the one causing it, but God is only allowing him to touch those who are not marked by God. So it is, in a roundabout way, the judgment of God. Now, the righteous will escape because they are cleansed by the blood of Christ. But Abaddon and his troops are all about destroying anybody, but God has said, no, you cannot destroy those who are marked. Now, how can we avoid being destroyed by Abaddon and his troops? Well, if we take a look at Job 38. I love the book of Job. It's the oldest book in the Bible. It's probably the oldest complete text on the planet, and Job has a lot to say about Abaddon. If we go to Job 38, chapter 31, starting in verse 9. If my heart has been enticed by a woman, or if I have lurked at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another, and let others bow down over her, for that would be wickedness. Yes, it would be iniquity worthy of judgment, for that would be a fire that consumes to Abaddon, and would root out all my increase. So it's about the wickedness. Wickedness ultimately leads to Abaddon lurking after you and coming after you. So wickedness leads to destruction, in other words, particularly in a literal sense, on the great day of the Lord, like it said in Jude 1:6. So what is it literally that we can do? Why is it that Abaddon is after some but not after others? Well, if we take a look at Job 28. From where then does wisdom come? And where is the place of understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the air. Abaddon and death, says, we have heard a report about it with our ears. God understands its way, and he knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees under the whole heavens to establish a weight for the winds and mete out the waters by measure. When he made a law for the rain and a path for the thunderbolt, then he saw wisdom and declared it. He prepared it indeed, he searched it out. And to man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and depart from evil is understanding. So if we kind of look at this in a better sense, it says Abaddon and death have heard a report about this thing called wisdom. It's the fear of the Lord. They've heard about it, but it's mostly just rumors because it's so easy to destroy men. It's so easy because of the wickedness of their hearts. So this whole entire thing that is taking place on the whole world with this fifth trumpet blast is essentially the world has been darkened, and now these creatures are tormenting and causing a lot of pain for 5 months, men who don't fear the Lord. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not that complicated. I mean, it is by, at a glance, but when you break it down, what we're talking about is fear the Lord. It's the beginning of wisdom. Once you have that piece, then it's going to be followed by recognizing that you have the need of a Savior, and that is Jesus Christ. And without that, Abaddon's coming. Hope this video helps. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Put them in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. If you feel called to support our channel to Patreon, that link is below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.